Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're going to be exploring what motivates compassionate actions.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. And our source is this YouTube video featuring Dr. Stan Steinle.
Okay.
He's a clinical psychologist and expert in compassion-focused therapy. Yeah.
Nice.
And you know me, I love a good deep dive, so this is right up my alley. He really dives into the psychology of compassion, you know.
Oh,
He even shares this fascinating case study that really brings all these ideas to life.
mm.
So have you ever wondered, what truly drives us to help others
Hmm.
or even ourselves? Is it just about feeling good, or is there something more profound at play?
It's funny how we often think of compassion as like this simple emotion, you know?
Yeah.
But Dr. Steinle shows that it's like this whole process. It's way more complex than we realized,
Right.
influenced by like our biology, psychology, and even our social context.
He actually uses the term algorithm.
Oh, wow.
He describes compassion as this ingrained stimulus-response pattern.
Ye-
So we encounter suffering, and it triggers this desire to help,
Right.
but then it gets kind of complicated.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. Dr. Steinle talks about how like engaging with suffering can actually activate our threat protection system,
Oh, wow.
whether it's our own suffering or someone else's.
Mm.
It's the same system that kicks in, during that fight or flight response.
Oh, I see.
Think about it like witnessing someone else's pain.
Yeah.
That can actually be perceived as like a threat to our own well-being.
Mhm.
So it triggers that self-preservation instinct to just like withdraw.
That's a fascinating perspective. It seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
You'd think our natural response to suffering would be to offer comfort and support.
Yeah, totally.
But you're saying our brains might actually interpret it as a danger signal.
Exactly. From an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense. Like our ancestors who avoided danger were more likely to, survive and pass on their genes. So this like inherent tendency to shy away from distress,
Yeah.
it really explains why acting compassionately doesn't always come easy. It can be a real struggle sometimes, and that's a key takeaway here.
It makes a lot of sense. And actually, Dr. Steinle points out that traditional compassion scales, like the self-compassion scale, they might not be capturing this whole internal battle.
Right.
They measure our overall capacity for compassion, but they don't necessarily pinpoint what drives us to act on it. And, what we're really interested in here is understanding what fuels those compassionate actions.
Absolutely.
That's what's most relevant for you, the listener.
Exactly. And that's where Dr. Steinle's research comes in.
Okay.
He developed the Compassion Motivation and Action Scale, or CAMAS for short.
Okay.
It digs deeper into the language of change.
Interesting.
So it moves beyond like simply gauging our compassion levels,
Okay.
It goes deeper. It explores the motivational factors that influence our compassionate behavior.
So instead of just asking, like, are you a compassionate person?
Yeah.
It's more like, what makes you want to be more compassionate, and what obstacles stand in your way?
Precisely. The CAMAS looks at like your desire for change, your belief in your ability to change, and your reasons for wanting to change.
Right.
It also considers your distress tolerance, which Dr. Steinle identifies as like a key predictor of whether you'll actually take compassionate action or not.
Okay, so let's break down those CAMAS subscales a bit further.
Okay.
He mentions intention, distress tolerance, and action.
Right.
I remember him giving examples like, I want to be kinder and more caring toward people I don't know for intention.
Yeah.
And I can handle my own feelings when responding to another person's suffering for distress tolerance.
Exactly. And the action subscale assesses whether those intentions are actually translated into real-world behaviors,
Right.
Things like, over the past week, I've been more helpful than usual.
It's amazing how much this scale reveals about the nuances of compassionate motivation.
Yeah.
That distress tolerance piece especially seems incredibly important.
Absolutely. And that's why Dr. Steinle finds it so valuable in his clinical practice. He uses it to like track his patient's progress and, tailor his therapeutic approach accordingly.
Right.
In the video, he shares this compelling case study about a new mother named Nula who is struggling with self-compassion.
I found Nula's story so relatable. She clearly yearned to be kinder to herself.
Yeah.
But she kept encountering these roadblocks, It's
Yeah.
like life throws these curveballs our way. And we struggle to find that inner compassion when we need it most.
What's important to understand is that Nula's struggles were really deeply rooted in her past. Like her upbringing emphasized toughness and self-reliance. So she learned to equate self-compassion with weakness.
It's fascinating how our early experiences can shape like our beliefs about self-worth and compassion.
Yeah.
And this conflict between her desire for self-compassion and her like ingrained beliefs,
Yeah.
it really came to a head when Dr. Steinle started introducing these concepts in therapy.
And that's a common experience, when we start to challenge deeply held beliefs, it can trigger our defense mechanisms.
Right.
Nula's anxiety actually spiked around session 4. It was clear that she understood the concept of self-compassion, but something was holding her back.
So she was like caught in this tug of war between what she should be feeling and what she actually felt.
Yeah.
And her scores on the CAMAS reflected this struggle. Her intention to be self-compassionate was high, but her distress tolerance and action remained low.
Right.
So what does that tell us about, like, the nature of self-compassion?
I think it highlights that gap between, wanting to change and believing that we can actually change. And that's, a crucial insight for anyone on the path towards self-compassion.
Yeah.
Dr. Steinle emphasized the importance of, validating Nula's fears and gently guiding her through this process. He described it as a gradual process of exposure, taking small steps and, building from there.
It reminds me of the saying, you can't run before you can walk.
Totally.
Sometimes we need to, slow down, acknowledge our fears, and approach self-compassion at a pace that feels safe and manageable, right?
Exactly. And, it's important to remember that self-compassion is a skill that can be learned and strengthened over time, just like any other skill.
Right.
It takes practice and patience.
Speaking of taking small steps, Dr. Steinle also mentioned using safe place imagery to help Nula connect with a sense of calmness and security.
Right.
He saw this as a crucial foundation for cultivating self-compassion.
It's all about shifting away from that threat-based mindset,
Yeah?
and activating the soothing system, the part of our brain that fosters connection and well-being.
Right.
Imagine it switching from a state of alert to a state of calm.
So Nula was making some progress, finding those little moments of self-care,
Yeah.
like having a cup of tea or meeting a friend.
Right.
But then she hit another snag around sessions 6 and 7.
Oh, no.
It's like taking 2 steps forward and then 1 step back.
This setback coincided with Dr. Steinle introducing the compassionate friend imagery exercise,
Okay.
which involves visualizing a being who embodies wisdom, strength, and unconditional compassion.
And this actually led to a dip in Nula's self-compassion action score.
Yeah.
That's surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd think visualizing a compassionate figure would inspire more self-compassion,
Right.
not less.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it's actually not uncommon. Think about it. When we're struggling, sometimes the idea of being compassionate towards ourselves can feel overwhelming, even threatening.
Yeah.
It can trigger feelings of unworthiness,
Right.
or bring up painful memories from the past.
So for Nula, maybe this imagery exercise brought up some unresolved emotions or insecurities that she wasn't quite ready to face.
It's possible.
I'm curious to hear more about how Dr. Steinle helped her navigate this setback.
Well, he started by, acknowledging and validating her experience.
Okay.
Instead of viewing the dip in her score as a failure, he saw it as valuable data.
Right.
It signaled a need to adjust the treatment plan and address those underlying emotional barriers.
That's a crucial point. It's a reminder that healing isn't always linear.
Yeah.
There will be ups and downs.
Right.
Periods of progress followed by periods of setbacks.
Exactly.
What matters is that we approach those setbacks with curiosity and compassion,
Yeah,
seeing them as opportunities for growth and deeper understanding.
absolutely. It sounds like he was really attuned to her needs, recognizing that sometimes we need to take a step back
Right.
before we can move forward.
Exactly. He understood that, pushing her towards self-compassion before she was ready
Yeah.
could actually backfire,
hold it.
and make her even more resistant.
Yeah.
So how did he help her, work through those emotional barriers? Did he use any specific techniques?
He did. He introduced this concept of compassionate self-correction,
Okay.
which basically means approaching our mistakes with kindness and understanding instead of that harsh self-judgment.
So instead of, beating herself up for not being the perfect mom,
Right.
Nula could acknowledge her imperfections.
Yeah.
Offer herself some grace.
Exactly.
And then focus on making those positive changes.
That's the idea. It's about finding that balance.
Right.
Between holding ourselves accountable
Yeah.
and treating ourselves with compassion, We
Yeah.
can learn from our mistakes without tearing ourselves down.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about approaching personal growth with a more supportive and encouraging inner voice, I guess.
And that's where visualizing the compassion itself comes in.
Okay.
By embodying those qualities of warmth, understanding, non-judgment,
Right.
Nula could start to internalize a more compassionate way of relating to herself.
It's like trading in that harsh inner critic
Yeah,
for a more supportive and encouraging inner coach.
totally.
I could see how that shift in perspective could be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
Did he mention any other techniques that he used with Nula?
He also emphasized the importance of exploring what he calls multiplicity.
Okay.
The idea that we have all these different parts of ourselves,
Right,
each
right.
with its own needs and feelings.
Hmm.
So instead of seeing herself as this monolithic self
Yeah.
who was either good or bad,
Dope.
she could start to recognize herself as this complex being with many different facets.
For someone who's used to viewing themselves in black and white terms,
Yeah.
that must have been a pretty radical shift in perspective.
Absolutely. It's like realizing that you're not just one character,
Right.
but a whole cast of characters, each with their own backstory and motivations.
Yeah.
And by bringing compassion to those different parts, especially the ones that are causing pain, we can start to heal those internal conflicts and cultivate a sense of wholeness.
So by integrating all these techniques,
Yeah.
Nula started making some serious progress, right?
She did.
In her journey towards self-compassion.
Right.
Her CAMAS scores improved.
Mhm.
Her anxiety and depression decreased.
Wow.
And she even started to feel more connected to herself and her experiences,
That's great.
It's inspiring to see how those shifts in perspective can lead to tangible positive changes.
Absolutely.
But what I'm really curious about is what are the broader implications of his research?
Mhm.
How can we apply these insights to our own lives and the world around us?
That's a great question. I think his work has the potential to revolutionize how we approach mental health.
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on symptom reduction,
Right.
it suggests that cultivating compassion,
Yeah.
particularly self-compassion, can be this driving force for healing and personal growth.
So it's about addressing the root of the problem, not just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms.
Right. By understanding what motivates those compassionate actions,
Yeah.
we can develop more effective and personalized interventions,
Right.
like the CAMAS, for example.
Mm.
It offers this valuable tool for assessing and tracking those motivational shifts.
It's like having a compass
Yeah,
that points us towards greater compassion and well-being.
totally. And it's not just about individual healing either.
Right.
Dr. Steinle touched upon the connection between self-compassion and outward acts of kindness.
He even wondered if increased self-compassion could lead to more tangible expressions of kindness in the world.
Right.
Things like increased charitable giving or volunteering.
Yeah. What if being kinder to ourselves makes us more likely to extend that kindness outwards to others?
Now, that's a thought-provoking idea.
It is.
It's like that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Kindness breeds kindness.
Totally.
Imagine the positive impact that could have on our communities in the world.
It's an inspiring vision. It gives me hope that we can create a more compassionate and just world. But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Okay.
let's go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Right.
About how, engaging with self-compassion can sometimes stir up those fears and resistances.
Yeah.
Why do you think that happens?
It's almost like a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd think focusing on self-compassion would lead to more positive feelings.
Right?
But sometimes it can unearth these deep-seated fears and insecurities.
Well, remember that threat protection system we talked about earlier? For people who've experienced trauma or challenging childhoods,
Right.
self-compassion can feel incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's like they've learned to associate kindness and vulnerability with danger.
Right.
So when they try to be kind to themselves,
Yeah.
it triggers those old defenses.
It's as if their brain is trying to shield them from further hurt,
Exactly.
even if that protection ultimately holds them back.
Right. That's why it's so crucial to approach self-compassion gradually, respecting those fears and creating a safe and supportive environment
Right.
for exploration.
It's about meeting ourselves where we are,
Exactly.
acknowledging our limitations,
Yeah.
and recognizing that self-compassion is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
That's a great point. It's not a race or a competition.
Right.
We don't have to force ourselves to be more compassionate than we're ready to be.
Hmm.
It's about, like, taking small steps, building trust, and allowing ourselves to, unfold at our own pace.
So how can we cultivate self-compassion without, like, triggering those fears and defenses? What are some practical steps we can take?
I think it all starts with awareness.
Okay.
We need to become mindful of those, like, critical thoughts and beliefs that are holding us back.
Right.
And understand where those beliefs came from.
So it's like taking a deep dive into our own personal histories.
Yeah.
Exploring those formative experiences that shaped our current relationship with ourselves.
Precisely. And as we gain a deeper understanding of those experiences, we can start to challenge those limiting beliefs.
Right.
And develop more compassionate ways of relating to ourselves.
It's like rewriting the script of our lives.
Yeah, I love that.
Replacing those old narratives of self-criticism with news stories of self-love and acceptance.
That beautifully captures the transformative power of self-compassion.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on, let's revisit Nula's case study.
Right.
And those 3 setbacks that she experienced during therapy.
Okay.
Could you walk us through those
Yeah.
and how Dr. Steinle helped her navigate them?
Absolutely. So her first setback happened around sessions 3 and 4.
Okay.
When Dr. Steinle introduced the concepts of compassion and self-compassion.
Right.
And remember, Nula's upbringing had, like, emphasized toughness and independence.
Yeah.
So these ideas kind of clash with her deeply ingrained fears of weakness.
So anxiety went up.
Yeah.
And her scores on the CAMAS, particularly her distress tolerance and action, remained low.
It was like she hit a brick wall.
It was.
It seems like those early messages about strength and self-reliance were creating a lot of internal conflict for her.
And Dr. Steinle recognized this as, like, a critical turning point in therapy.
Okay.
Instead of, dismissing her fears or pushing her to embrace self-compassion before she was ready.
Right.
He emphasized validation and support.
So he met her with understanding, acknowledging the validity of her struggles, and respecting her need to, like, process those emotions at her own pace.
By creating that safe and supportive space,
Yeah.
he helped her start to dismantle those fears and gradually build her capacity for self-compassion.
Her second setback occurred around sessions 6 and 7,
Right.
when he introduced the compassionate friend imagery exercise.
And that led to a dip in her self-compassion action score.
Yeah. Which we found so surprising.
We did.
What do you think was going on there?
Well, it's important to remember the context.
All right.
Nula was having a particularly rough week.
Yeah.
Leading up to that session, her daughter was teething. She was sleep-deprived and feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
All of that probably triggered feelings of, like, guilt and inadequacy, making self-compassion feel even more out of reach.
It's like when you're already running on empty.
Yeah.
The idea of nurturing yourself can feel like an added burden.
Totally.
Rather than a source of relief.
Exactly. And Dr. Steinle recognized this as a sign that Nula needed more support in managing her stress and regulating her emotions.
Right.
So he temporarily shifted the focus away from the imagery exercise and towards building those essential pooping skills.
So he adapted the treatment plan to, like, meet her where she was.
Yeah.
Recognizing that sometimes we need to tend to those basic needs before we can delve into the deeper emotional work.
Exactly. What about her third setback?
That one occurred around sessions 9 and 10.
Okay.
When Dr. Steinle began exploring multiplicity. And this exploration unearthed a well of suppressed anger in Nula, which triggered a wave of self-criticism.
Oh, wow.
And caused her distress tolerance to just plummet.
It seems like acknowledging and processing those difficult emotions can sometimes lead to, like, a temporary increase in discomfort before things start to improve.
How did Dr. Steinle help her through that?
He understood that Nula's anger wasn't something to be feared or suppressed, but rather, like, a valuable piece of her emotional landscape.
Okay.
He skillfully guided her through this process, helping her understand the origins of her anger and develop healthier ways of expressing it.
So instead of bottling up her anger, she could start to acknowledge it, validate it, and channel it in constructive ways.
Exactly. This allowed her to release some of that pent-up energy and begin healing those old wounds. It's really amazing how Dr. Steinle was able to, like, turn each of those setbacks into opportunities for deeper healing and growth.
It speaks volumes about his skill and compassion as a therapist.
It does.
I agree. He really embodied that compassionate approach,
Totally.
meeting Nula with understanding
Yeah.
and helping her navigate those challenging moments with grace and resilience.
It reminds us that even in the midst of struggle,
Right.
there's always an opportunity for growth and transformation.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
It has.
And I'm so grateful for your expertise. We've really delved into the complexities of compassion and self-compassion,
We have.
exploring the science, the personal journeys, and the broader implications.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up this episode,
Okay.
I'd love to hear any final thoughts or reflections you have for our listeners. What key takeaways would you like to leave them with?
It really has been a fascinating exploration.
It has.
I think what resonates most with me is like how Dr. Steinle's work so beautifully blends those scientific insights with the, deeply human experience of compassion. It's this powerful reminder that we all have this innate capacity for compassion, and that nurturing it can lead to profound healing and transformation within ourselves and in the world around us.
You know what strikes me? We often think of compassion as this like gentle, passive quality.
Right.
But his research reveals this this strength and resilience that comes with cultivating compassion, especially self-compassion.
You're so right. It's not about like lowering our standards or making excuses for our shortcomings. It's about facing our challenges with, kindness, understanding, and that willingness to learn and grow from those experiences.
It's about recognizing that we're all, perfectly imperfect human beings.
Totally.
Navigating this complex and often challenging world.
Right.
And when we can extend that compassion inward to ourselves, it creates this ripple effect, positively impacting our, relationships, our communities, ultimately the world at large.
I love that image of a ripple effect.
Yeah.
It captures how acts of self-compassion can radiate outward, inspiring kindness and connection in these unexpected ways.
And what I find so encouraging is that, he doesn't just present compassion as this abstract concept.
Right.
He provides these tangible tools and strategies like the CAMAS.
Yes.
That empower us to actually cultivate compassion in our daily lives.
The CAMAS is so useful because it helps us, track our progress, identify those stumbling blocks we talked about, and personalize our approach to self-compassion.
It's like having this customized roadmap, right?
Exactly.
Guiding us towards greater well-being.
And the best part is anyone can use this roadmap.
Right.
You don't have to be a therapist or a meditation guru to, tap into the power of compassion.
It's a skill we can all develop with practice and intention.
It's like exercising a muscle. The more we engage those compassion muscles, the stronger they become.
Right.
And with each act of self-compassion, we not only benefit ourselves, but we contribute to creating a more compassionate and connected world.
Absolutely.
It's a win-win, wouldn't you say?
Totally. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a little challenge. Think about one small act of self-compassion you can practice today. Maybe it's taking a few minutes to breathe deeply and connect with your body, offering yourself a kind word, or simply acknowledging your struggles without judgment. Whatever it is, commit to, integrating a little more self-compassion into your day.
I love it.
I think you'll be surprised by the ripple effects it creates.
That's a wonderful challenge. And I'd add this.
Remember,
cultivating self-compassion is an ongoing journey, not a destination. There will be moments of ease and moments of resistance. Be patient with yourself. Honor your pace and celebrate every step you take towards greater kindness and connection.
Absolutely.
Every step counts.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of compassion.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Yes.
And keep spreading kindness